Hello ladies and gentlemen of the internet. My name is Eirik and today we're conquering the entire silicone step on this mold, including the separating walls. Last time we covered how to deal with the hands, which was awkward but we managed, so today we won't even mention the arms at all. They'll be there while I put the silicone on, but then you'll see that they will be gone before I start building the walls. To see how that all went down, you can click the link in the top right corner to watch the video on the hands. Of course, if you'd like more personal feedback on your own work, check out my Patreon page. There's a link in the description below. And if you're amongst the first 25 patrons to pledge $25 or more, you will get a plaster cast of the 3/4 skull I've been working on. And there's a link in the top right corner to watch me sculpt this skull. So with all the formalities over with, let's get to it. This video is going to be all about silicone, so I'll start with what silicone I'm using. This is Blue Star Silicone's Blue Sil RTV 3325P, and the P stands for paste, because this is a paste silicone. So some people seem to hate paste silicones and think they don't lend themselves to good results, but honestly, here in Italy, this is pretty standard. Now, maybe we're living in the dark ages, who knows. But foundries around here will often use this kind of silicone if you ask them to make your mold for you, which honestly I would do if I had the money for it. Usually they will do a layer or two of liquid silicone first to capture all the details, but frankly I don't think it makes any visible difference really, but it does save you some time for sure. As I might have mentioned in the video on the hands, I chose not to use liquid silicone in this case because the area where the hands and the face touch need to be kept clean of silicone, and using paste is the easiest way of controlling where your silicone goes. And there were so many areas on this sculpture where gravity would have become an issue with liquid silicone. So I decided to go down the long road of applying all the silicone by hand. The mix ratio is very flexible. 5 kilos of silicone comes with 5 tubes of catalyzer. So if you're really into being accurate, we can weigh out 1 kilo and use 1 tube per kilo. But it's not really necessary, and I just mix by color. As long as you mix very thoroughly, it's always been fine for me, though it might take hours to set up if you use way too little catalyzer. But definitely make sure to mix thoroughly. I applied a total of 3 layers of silicone to the entire sculpture. The first layer is really focused on getting all the details, staying thin so I don't capture any air bubbles or water bubbles. This type of silicone needs to be used in conjunction with water, as it is very sticky and the water keeps it from sticking to your hands. You could use gloves, but the silicone stick to gloves like crazy, so I don't like using that. But when I've made molds for other people on sculptures other than my own, I have used gloves and sunflower seed oil to keep the silicone from sticking to the gloves. And this works great, and it smells pleasant as well. But on my own work, I'm sticking to using water and no gloves, as I feel I have more control without the gloves, and I'm terrified of messing up my sculpture while attempting to make the mold. I try to work in areas where the water haven't run on my sculpture, as water softens the clay, making it easier for me to make an accidental dent in the surface while applying the silicone. So, first layer I stay thin, I avoid trapping bubbles of any kind, and I avoid touching the clay at any cost. The second layer is a lot faster and simpler, and the goal here is really just to build thickness. With this silicone, you're not going to trap a ton of bubbles either way, so you can go thick without worrying too much as long as the first layer has no bubbles. The second layer won't lack strength and integrity even if there is a few bubbles in it. First layer is maybe around a couple of millimeters thick, and the second layer is maybe around 1/2 to 3/4 of a centimeter thick. This layer is a lot less crucial than the first one, and it goes by a lot faster. And I'm also a bit careless on the surface with this one, as the third layer is the layer where I smooth out inconsistencies in the surface, which makes registration with the mother mold a lot better. This silicone tends to shrink a little bit, and if there's corresponding texture in your silicone and in your mother mold, and the silicone shrinks, said texture won't match and won't fit, creating an ill-fitting silicone or mother mold, depending on who you choose to blame. The third layer I didn't even film. There really is nothing to see, and it very well might be the least exciting thing that has ever happened. Okay, so onto the walls. This is an important step, because if the walls are misplaced, the mother mold might not come off. Now, there are ways, as I'll show you when we deal with the mother mold, to deal with any issues. So, even if you have a misplaced wall, there's ways to get around that. But it's always better to try and make your mold as simple as possible, and that starts by placing the walls well. If the walls are placed badly, the whole mold might be ruined, or you might have to make a lot more complex mother mold than what you actually planned on. I mark out where I want the walls to go using a marker. I mark the high points all along the sculpture, essentially. I'm looking for where the peak of the form is, right where the front and the back meet. You could use pieces of clay along this line and check if you see the piece of clay from the front and from the back. And if you've placed the clay well, and it's a good spot to build a wall, you'll be able to see it from the front and the back. Usually, my philosophy when deciding on where to put the wall is to make one side that's going to come off easy, and the other side I'll deal with by creating more pieces of my mother mold. In this case, there's no way the front is going to come off easy, there's too much stuff going on, so the back is going to be the easy side. And in the end, I think it ended up being 2 mother mold pieces on the back, while the front ended up at around maybe 6. Anytime I was unsure where to place the wall, I placed it in favor of having the back come off as easy as possible. The separating wall separates the 2 halves of the mother mold, front and back, which in turn is going to be made up out of several pieces each. It is also where I will cut the silicone in 2 when I open the mold. I make my walls freehand. You could probably create a wall using aluminum shim stock or something, but I just do it freehand using the same silicone putty with a slight twist. However, I use fast catalyzer, which is pink, and it smells like raspberries, which is nice. So instead of sitting around waiting for the normal yellow catalyzer to set up, I can work super fast. Once I reach the end of the wall, I can start over again. And this ends up saving maybe half to a full day worth of work. I imagine that maybe the pink catalyzer becomes crumbly sooner than the yellow, but because it is encased in yellow catalyzer, I think the mold is probably going to be fine. I'm not entirely sure of the science here, but I believe faster catalyzer tend to leach more oil from the silicone, which in turn makes it crumbly, and which in turn makes it fall apart. But I might be wrong about that. Either way, it's always smart when making a mold to cast a hard copy fairly quickly, like a plaster cast or something, just in case. I have heard stories of molds burning up in a foundry fire with no hard copy having been made, and then your sculpture is gone forever, which is a huge shame. If it was a nice sculpture. And again, I just mix by color. I do maybe 3 to 4 passes with the pink catalyzer, building up the width and the height, a few millimeters smaller than what I intend the finished wall to be. These last few millimeters I'll finish off with yellow normal catalyzer, making the mold look all pretty like. It's pretty hard to control the pink catalyzer as it sets up too fast, so with the yellow catalyzer I can get a good square wall that are clean and will register well with my mother mold. I always try to make sure that the walls are coming more or less at a 90-degree angle out from the rest of the mold, and this helps with registration. If I need to, I'll use a wooden tool in an area that's hard to reach, but usually I just use my fingers and it works out just fine. Using your pointer finger and your thumb together in kind of like a pinching motion and running them along the edge is the best way I've found to make really nice 90-degree angles. Once the silicone sets up a wee bit, you can run a wet finger over it lightly to smooth it out that last little bit. Most important thing is working clean while making walls and trying your best to make them look as good as possible. A good looking mold tends to work better in my experience. If you're in the US, there are options similar to this silicone around. Smooth-On makes a putty silicone called Poyo Putty, I think, and Resilpalm makes one called Silicone Molding Putty. I believe these are both fairly similar products to what I'm using here, but I've used neither of them myself, so proceed at your own risk. They can both be bought from the Complete Sculptor in New York, which ship all over the US, and it's the best sculpture supply in the world, I think. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, I'd like to invite you to take a look at my Patreon page. So for those of you who don't know about Patreon, it's a way for you and me to connect on a more personal level than what we can do here. Here you are a passive viewer unless you comment and share, of course, so please comment and share. But on Patreon you can become an active participant. It's a great platform where I teach you personally, giving feedback on sculptures you're working on at home. We can communicate over email or by video chat and talk about all things sculpture. And if you would like to get your hands on some sculptures of mine, Patreon is the best way to do so. So if this sounds interesting, head over to my Patreon page. There's a link in the description below. Consider hitting the thumbs up button and the red subscribe button to see more if you liked what you saw. To get notified when a new video comes out, click the little bell next to the subscribe button. In the description below, you'll find links to all my social media. Follow me there to see what I'm up to in the studio every day. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.